Welcome to the Stuff You Should Think About podcast, where I answer everyday questions about everyday phenomena and objects in bite-sized episodes. Hey, how's it going? I'm G. So, we're going to talk about extinction risk today, which sounds like a movie trailer voiceover, but it's an actual thing people study. And this country, a lot of researchers call it a kind of a time of peril. You'll hear that phrase a lot. So let me unpack what they mean in plain language. First thing, human extinction versus civilizational collapse. Extinction is hard to stop. No more humans, ever. Not things are bad. Not society broke down. But literally every person gone. And no new generations. Civilizational collapse is softer than that. But still awful. Think we lose global trade, advanced tech, maybe even basic science and medicine. And we never really climb back. People might survive, but the long-term future is permanently damaged. So when folks say global catastrophic risks, they're talking about events that are big enough to hit the whole planet and either kill a huge chunk of people or permanently wreck humanity's potential. Extinction is like the extreme end of that spectrum, particularly. Collapse is we're technically alive, but everything we built is mostly gone and. Now, how do you even put numbers on this stuff? Like, you might have heard a stat along the lines of maybe a 1 in 6 chance of a catastrophic long-term future ending event this century. That's from some risk researchers looking at all the big threats together. Other experts think that's too high. Some think it might even be too low. There's a ton of uncertainty because obviously we don't have a big data set of human-level civilization collapses to analyze. We've only got one civilization currently running. That's us. What they do instead is this mix of looking at history, running physical models, and then using expert judgment where we just don't have a good stat. So for something like an asteroid impact, we've got telescopes, we've got crater records, we have physics. You can actually estimate how often does a big rock, big enough to be species ending, hit Earth. For new tech or global war, it's more about scenarios, game theory, and honestly, educated guesswork. Nobody pretends it's precise. But even a rough, this is not tiny number is enough to be worrying. Okay. Natural versus human made. Historically, Mass extinctions come from things like huge asteroids, supervolcanoes, or weird cosmic stuff like nearby gamma ray bursts. The good news is, as far as we know, those truly species ending natural events are rare on human timescales, like millions of years apart, rare. That doesn't mean zero risk this century, but it's small. And for big asteroids, at least, we're getting pretty decent at spotting the ones that could wipe us out. And we haven't seen an imminent dinosaur killer in the pipeline. Human made risks are a different story. They're newer, so we don't have a long history to lean on. And they mostly come from our own power growing faster than our wisdom. Nuclear weapons, climate change, engineered biology, advanced AI, all that. A lot of scholars now think over the next 100 years, the main extinction level threats are going to be from ourselves, not from space rocks or random volcano moods. That's part of why people say we're in a time peril. We've suddenly got tools big enough to break the future, and we're still figuring out how not to. And I guess the way I feel about it is, even if you think some of these numbers are off by a factor of 10, the stakes are so huge that you don't need precision to care. Like, if someone told you, hey, your house has a 1 in 100 chance of burning down this year, you wouldn't say, well, the exact percentage is debatable, so whatever. You'd at least check the wiring, right? All right. So let's walk through the big human made threats people worry about. Not to freak you out more, like get a clear map of what's on the table. First up, nuclear war. We've had nuclear weapons since the 1940s. And we've had a few genuinely scary close calls, false alarms, misread radar, that kind of thing, where we're basically got lucky. The nightmare isn't just the blasts themselves. It's nuclear winter. If enough cities and industrial sites burn, smoke can get lofted up into the upper atmosphere and block sunlight for years. Then you get massive global cooling, failed harvest, famine. Some scientists think a full-scale U.S.-Russia exchange could be bad enough that only pockets of humanity survive. If that. Others think there might still be a path through, but it'd be brutal and could easily trigger civilizational collapse. Then climate change. People sometimes go straight to climate extinction. And most climate scientists don't see mainstream warming projections as literally wiping out humans. The scariest stuff is tipping points. Ice sheets melting faster than expected. big ocean circulation patterns slowing down, permafrost burping out methane, large parts of the tropics becoming basically unlivable without AC. That can destabilize food systems, drive mass migration, and increase conflict. It's more like a long, grinding pressure that can make every other problem worse and push us toward collapse instead of a clean, instant extinction event. Same deal with biodiversity loss. Losing species doesn't usually kill us overnight, but it erodes the natural systems we lean on: pollination, fisheries, stable climate regulation, and disease control. You can think of it as quietly removing bolts from an airplane in flight. For a while, nothing happens until something does. Biologically, risks are where a lot of experts' eyebrows go way up. Naturally emerging pandemics like COVID are bad enough, but if someone intentionally engineered a pathogen to be more contagious, more deadly, or harder to treat, that could be much worse. Modern biotech makes it easier to tweak viruses and bacteria. It's powerful and mostly used for good. But the dual use problem is real. Many people who study global catastrophic risk actually rate engineered pandemics as more threatening, long term, than natural ones. Just because design lets you sidestep some of the trade offs evolution is stuck with. And then there's advanced AI. This is the one where opinions are all over the place. Some researchers think we'll build AI systems this century that are smarter than humans in basically every domain and can actually autonomously, in the real world, hacking, persuading, running labs, and designing tech. If those systems aren't aligned with human values and they're given a lot of power, there's a scenario where they end up optimizing for their own goals in ways that push humans aside or worse. That's what people mean by unaligned AI as an existential risk. You'll hear numbers like maybe a double-digit % chance that advanced AI goes really badly this century from some pretty serious researchers. Others say it's way lower, maybe close to zero, and worry that we're overhyping it. The thing that makes AI feel different, at least to me, is that it can improve itself and operate at a digital speed. Nuclear weapons are terrifying, but they don't wake up one day and decide to write better nukes. So, putting it together, nuclear war and engineered pandemics look like the more instant catastrophe paths. Climate change and biodiversity loss are slower, grinding threats that weaken us and could lock in really bad long-term futures. And advanced AI is this wild card where the upside is huge, but some smart people think the downside could go all the way to extinction. not a fun menu. But knowing what's on it is the first step to changing the order, you know. So, zooming out, how likely is it that humanity actually goes extinct this century? Different people give very different answers. There's no single official number. Some folks in the existential risk world have put the overall odds of a truly future ending event this century across all causes at something like a few percent to around that 1 in 6 estimate we talked about earlier. A lot of mainstream scientists would probably say those upper end numbers feel too high. But most agree the risk is not literally zero. There's huge uncertainty, partly because the biggest risks are the ones we never lived through before. We've had nukes for less than a century. We've had serious AI only for a few decades. And the bleeding edge stuff for, a handful of years. Biotech is racing forward. So you get this wide range. Some people say extinction this century is very unlikely, but worth guarding against. Others say it's uncomfortably plausible if we don't get our act together. The good news is we're not just spectators here. These are human-made risks, which means humans can dial them up or down. The levers for nuclear weapons that look like arms control treaties, better early warning systems, and making it harder for accidents or miscommunications to turn into world-ending launches. A lot of the near-miss incidents we know about came down to one or two people keeping a cool head. Depending on that, forever is not a plan. Designing systems that are safer by default is. On climate, every ton of greenhouse gas we don't emit makes extreme futures less likely. It's boring, but it's true. Rapid clean energy build out, protecting forests, changing how we move around and grow food. All that stuff adds up. Same with biodiversity. Conserving critical habitats, stopping overfishing, cutting pollution. Those moves don't just save cute animals. They keep the whole web that supports us from fraying. For biorisks, people talk a lot about biosecurity and surveillance, better pathogen detection, safer lab practices, smart regulation of powerful tools like DNA synthesis and advanced gene editing. The idea is to let beneficial research happen while making it much, much harder for anyone to create or release something truly catastrophic by accident or on purpose. AI governance is its own big conversation. Things like stress testing advanced systems before they're deployed, having independent audits, coordinating between labs and governments so it's not just a wild arms race, and building in strong safety techniques from the start. There's also a lot of work going on in alignment itself, getting AI systems to reliably do what we actually want. Even in weird situations, we don't have that problem solved yet. But it's not like nobody's trying. And hey, on the natural side, we're not helpless either. Planetary defense finding and tracking near Earth asteroids, testing ways to nudge their orbits, that's already happening at a basic level. Big supervolcanoes and cosmic explosions are harder. But even just better monitoring and planning can turn total surprise into we saw this coming and had a little bit of time to prepare. So, where does that leave us? I'd say the risks this century are real and non trivial. But they're not fixed laws of physics. They depend a lot on choices we make governments, companies, scientists, and honestly, regular people pushing for better priorities. If we treat this as a one time test that we actually want to pass, we can probably drive the odds of extinction way down. I don't think the right response is to panic or to shrug and say, if it happens, it happens. It's more like your smoke alarm is beeping. Annoying, yeah. But it's a sign to check the stove, not sit on the couch. We're the first generation that really has tools to end our story and also the tools to protect it for potentially millions of years. What we do with that is the whole game. All right, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thanks for hanging out with me and thinking through some pretty heavy stuff. We'll keep coming back to this in future episodes, dig into specific risks and what's actually being done about them. I hope your day still goes the way you want it to, and just maybe with a little more appreciation for the fact that we're all still here.